Welcome to Catalyst Conversations, the podcast where we spark powerful change in women's wealth. I'm Hadriana, a wealth coach, counselor, and strategist, and each week we dive into the conversations, strategies, and stories that help women confidently create the life they've always dreamed of. So grab your favorite bevy, settle in, and let's get started on transforming your relationship with money. This is Catalyst Conversations, igniting change in women's wealth. Let's spark the conversation. Hi, everyone. Join me, please, in welcoming to Catalyst Conversation, Chotsani Sackey, and I know you're going to enjoy this. So, Chotsani, welcome.
Thank you.
It's so
I'm excited to be here.
you. Yes, it's great. It's great that you and I got to connect, and it's not very long that we actually got to connect, but I was so impressed with the work that you're doing, with the experience that got you to the work that you're doing, that I felt she has to be on the podcast. So once again, welcome. Now hear this. I ask most of my guests a personal motto or a favorite quote, and I'll say these are Chotsani's. I have options. All my needs are met. Can you tell me a more powerful combination of words? I have options. All my needs are met. Chotsani, tell us, why is this so impactful for you?
Sure. Let's see. So I have options. I think that stems from feelings of stuckness.
Yep.
And that could be in any aspect of life. And the shoulds and the could haves and the wish I would haves. Um, you always have a moment, the next moment to start something new. And we tell ourselves that we're stuck in our stories. We, you know, write drafts and we rewrite the drafts and we tell ourselves the same things over and over and over and kind of perfect the stories that we tell ourselves. And when you shift your mindset and you realize that you have options, that although what you're going through is very personal, you're not the only one who's ever experienced that thing. Um, you can do something about it, and you have, the power. You can take your power back and figure out a way to move forward.
Yeah, definitely. I like to say that even if your options are between a rock and a hard place, just the power to choose is phenomenal. It really puts you in a position where you are partaking in what your life becomes because you have been given the option. And then the other part of your motto is all my needs are met. You are singing my song here. Hello. All my needs are met. Tell me about this one.
Sure. So that is a mantra that I repeat to myself all the time.
Right.
If I'm running late for work, if I miss a bus, I see the bus pulling off when I'm walking down the block. If, the train pulls out, if I'm running late just because things happen out of my control. There's a reason why that happened. I'm not going to second guess it.
Right.
I know that I'll get to where I need to be. Maybe everybody else is running late too. I don't know. But the thing is, I'm not missing out on anything.
Right.
And I know that when I get there, everything is fine.
Ah!
And like I just used to get caught up in that anxiety again of the should. I should be perfect. I should always be on time. Yes, you should strive for punctuality. However, you can't control somebody pulling the emergency brake. I mean, I live in New York, right? You can't control somebody pulling the emergency brake or holding the doors or, whatever it is. And you can't control the meltdowns that happen when you're trying to put shoes on and go to school in the morning. So, like,
Yes.
look, we will get to school, we will get to work. All my needs are met. I never have to wonder if I'm thinking about, this bill that just came out of nowhere that needs to get paid, all my needs will get met. Oh, here comes a refund for something
Yes.
that, is out of stock or damaged in transit. Whatever it is, it'll all work itself out.
Yeah, that's a very Zen approach to life. It's a very kind of like I have visions of you sitting like this, like on the bus, like I ain't late, everything's fine, or whatever has to be will be. Is that how it translates?
No, I wish. I swear. Yeah, okay, yeah. Like I'm sitting there, yeah, meditating. Uh maybe on the inside, but that's not on the outside. That's not how it looks. Usually I have my mean mugging face on.
Uh-huh.
So but I'm having to tell myself, it's fine. Like I'll get to work when I get to work. I can't control what's happening around me.
Yeah.
And I'm not lacking in any way, right?
Yes.
So that's the big takeaway from it all. Um it's not necessarily a zen, but it's more so just like a surrender. I mean, maybe
Yeah.
that's what you mean by zen, right? It's getting out of my head and thinking that I can really control things that I can't. And so when I just rely on the fact that I know that I don't always know best,
Mhm.
then I can say, well, look, there's some universal reason why this is
Yeah.
happening.
Yeah.
And then funny sometimes when I have to take a detour, I'll run into somebody I haven't seen in 15 years
Mm-hmm.
and
Yep.
I will, reconnect with them.
Yeah.
Or any other kind of serendipitous thing will happen. And so, just take a step back, realize that it's not that serious. Don't sweat the small stuff. That was a really big catchphrase.
Yeah.
Um, I think back in the 90s maybe. And just, you know, don't worry about it. Because
Well,
you can't. You'll stress
you
out constantly if you do.
I think it's really true. One, that surrender doesn't mean I don't care or that I don't feel it. It doesn't
Right.
mean that you're sitting and just, letting the world pass you by. We still get to live lives that are engaged, that are purposeful, that are bringing us joy and creating joy for the people's whose lives that we touch. But I also think that surrendering ultimately assures us that there are other powers at play that are contributing to our wellness. So that when I like to say, I'm going to focus on the natural and I'll let God, that's how I call my supernatural, my source, my being. I'll let
Yes.
God do the super, right? So
Yes.
that I will
Yes.
have supernatural results. So I completely get that. I'm not zenning, and sometimes I still speed when I'm late and all the rest. But I think I like the idea of surrender. In fact, it's part of my affirmation for 2025. It's
Hmm.
part of the theme that I'm going with because I like to control things. This could turn into like a confessions episode. But for real, you know what? I think that kind of brings us to what you do. Because I think with personal mantras like the ones that you shared with us, it leans really well into the work that you do. So I'm going to share here that for those of you who are meeting Chotsani for the first time, she is a personal spiritual coach. Now, having said that, I'll read to you what she put here to describe herself. I am a multi hyphenated woman, constantly shifting priorities through different phases of my life. Only recently have I started to understand and enjoy the process. Okay, let's start at the top. You are multi hyphenated. Usually that means you've been married and divorced, and your maiden name has a dash and a dash and a dash dash. But I don't think that's where you're going. You are a multi hyphenated woman. Share with us some of the hyphens or at least a couple of them so we get an idea of where your toes are tapping and what your hands are touching.
Sure. So daughter, sister, mother, supervisor, friend, attorney, woman, Caribbean. I mean,
Yeah.
take your pick, right? spiritual,
Yeah.
just anything. You know, Leo, right? I mean,
Right.
that's your last name. That's my sign, right? So
Yes.
it's just, take your pick. There's so many categories that I could put myself in that are aspects of my personality.
Hmm.
And so in terms of trying to just be a whole person, it kind of depends upon where I am at the moment and what's going on, right? And
And
what kind of
yeah,
takes.
yeah. What role are you playing? What hat are you wearing?
Mhm.
And how you're going to be of the best service in that moment. So,
Right.
when you are out and about moving the kids, shuffling them around, you're not doing wife. You're not doing daughter. You're like, I am the queen of this household. I am your mother. You will listen to me. Let's go. Right? And you're also playing the role when in that same scenario, let's say a similar scenario where you're mothering, you're not laying down the law. Maybe in that scenario, you are the bosom of comfort. You are the bosom of care and love and nurturing. I think we limit ourselves a lot when we try to say, I am this one thing. And that's difficult for many people. I'm glad that you claim your multi hyphenation. And I think it brings to your work a lot that understanding and that awareness brings it lands in your work and it shows up in how you're able to serve. Because if I go through your bio, you are an attorney. Like you're currently working as like in the field of law, correct, Chotsani?
Correct.
Okay. You're an attorney. You are an author. You're a mom and you're a coach. And these are just a few of the places and spaces where you kind of lend yourself. But your spiritual development journey is what led you to creating the business or the service, I'll say, that we're talking about here, which is Mastering Your Greatness School. Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. So with all of those titles, categories, labels comes responsibility and overwhelm.
Hmm.
So trying to figure out where that overwhelm is coming from and what you can do about it is a big part of just making it through the day.
Fair.
So for me, this all kind of stemmed from COVID and being home and having to figure out how to raise a child, work, because work did not slow down for me. It actually kind of picked up a little bit at a certain point
Right.
while we were all remote. And just being able to manage everything, um, looking for that external validation, looking for somebody to understand what I'm going through and give me a break wasn't happening because
Right.
everybody was going through something. And so I had to really turn inside, inward, and figure out what my tools were,
Hmm.
how I could best help and serve myself. So I don't want to get so kind of like cynical and say, nobody cares about me. It wasn't about that. It was about, right? It was about me taking care of myself.
Right.
And through that, doing some deep diving and realizing that, this is who I am. I'm here for a reason. And I'm pretty awesome, right? And
Yes,
I can do
ma'am.
some amazing things because I am doing them, right? It's almost
Yeah.
like you have no choice, but
Yep.
then you do realize you do have choices, you do have options, right? And not only can you kind of sit in what you currently have and what you're aware of, but there's so much more out there. Like we're only, even when you know that you're dope,
Yep.
even, there's so much more that you could be doing. There's so much
Yeah.
more that you have access to. Why not try to upgrade and up level? And what better time when you couldn't go outside
Yeah. You might as well.
to start doing a little bit of inner work and figuring out who you really are as opposed to who you've been telling yourself you are. And so that's kind of where that vision came from for the school, is giving other people tools, not to tell them who they are, but to give them the tools to do their own work, do the research based upon, certain aspects of, where they were born and, the um their time and date of birth and things like that. Just figuring out some things, right? Like we got here and there were things that we didn't really have a lot of control over.
Right.
And we get into that nature nurture argument. And there's some things where we're a product of our environment. And then
Mhm.
there are some things where there's an actual imprint on you. And some people just have always followed that and other people lose track of it. And so sometimes it's necessary to pause and figure out, who am I really, right?
Mhm.
Or who was I when I first got here? And then figure out, am I still on that path? And do I want to change? Because you have your fate and your destiny, but you also have free will, right? And
You have choice.
you have choices and you have options.
Yeah. You're saying that, and I'm sitting here and I'm like, that is scary. I'll tell you honestly, some of the hardest work I've ever done is introspection. It's introspective. It
Mhm, mhm,
is calling myself to the table to sit in the chair and have a conversation. I mean, this is this is hard work. I wouldn't say necessarily hard because I
mhm,
find that the discovery is very freeing.
mhm,
But man, it's intense. There are times when it's scary. There are
mhm,
times when it just exhilarates. There's just I
mhm.
don't know, man. I needed a
Yes.
therapist. I'm telling you, I still use a
Absolutely.
therapist.
Absolutely.
Um,
Therapists need therapists. I mean, we all need, like,
yes.
nobody nobody can say that they wouldn't benefit from therapy.
Oh, 100%.
I haven't met that person. Yeah. I mean, I don't know everybody in the world, but everybody
Yeah.
needs therapy.
They're delusional. I always say, I'm a
Yeah.
coach, I need a coach, right?
Hmm.
You're a
Hmm.
therapist, you need a therapist. The pastor needs a pastor.
Hmm.
You,
Hmm.
as a spiritual coach, you need someone to shine spiritual light on your life so that you
Hmm.
can see some of the things that you're missing. So
Right.
I appreciate the thought or the advice to look inwards. I would need someone like you to help us figure out how to do that and not just get lost, not just fall apart when we hit certain things. And I appreciate the work that you do for the clients that you serve best, because, like you shared, it's really important to put yourself first. Now, please explain to our listeners why putting yourself first is not selfish. I don't want to be the one to say it again. So, you tell us, why is it that putting yourself first before you try to help anyone else is probably the best thing you can do?
Yeah, so I would say that it is selfish, and so what? Right? Right? I mean, like,
Girl,
what's wrong with being selfish? Because
uh,
you look, if you I need to tell myself this every day because I say it, and don't get me wrong, I when I'm in a situation like this and I'm having a conversation and it's like I'm saying these things, don't think that I follow my own advice all the time, right? So, I don't think there's anything wrong with being selfish. I think selfish has been given a bad rap
fair.
because you can't give from an empty cup, right? I don't want to use all these like cliches, but you really cannot.
Hmm.
And when you're flying on a plane and they tell you put your mask on first, that's not selfish, that's survival.
Yes.
Um, so you really do have to always take a look at yourself. You are responsible for yourself. You cannot look for somebody to tell you who you are, um, aside from source. But
Yes.
source is also within, right? So you got to look for that inside of yourself. And so you cannot, you have to commit to opening your eyes. You have to commit to having those difficult conversations with yourself.
Yeah.
And I think one thing that happens a lot, people do a lot of, sometimes people spiritually bypass, right? And
Hmm.
they say that they've done work, but they haven't gone into those deep, dark parts of who they are. and they haven't
Mhm.
confronted them and they haven't acknowledged them. I mean, you're not going to get rid of them necessarily, but at least know that they're there and become aware.
Yeah.
But, some people go through their life, or they go through a journey, and it's kind of like, oh yeah, I'm good, I'm fine, everything, I did my work. But you really sometimes that's just, there's more to be done, right? Because there's no final destination. When
Yeah.
you master your greatness, like, then you're done and like you're out.
Yeah.
Like, there's
You're
nothing left to do.
literally out.
There's nothing left to do. So it's a lifelong journey. It's not
Yeah.
something where, I'm not going to necessarily be working with a client for the rest of their life, right? It is kind of like taking their head and turning it. Sometimes I physically have to turn my son's head when I want him to do something,
Mhm.
taking them so that they can look at where they need to go, right? And
Yeah.
then, but they have to walk, they have to do it. And
Yeah.
so when you take care of yourself, you get that courage, you get that motivation to
Mhm.
do those things. And that's not selfish, because if you don't, then stuff is going to happen to you and people are going to make you do things that you really don't want to, that are not good for you.
Yeah. And you're really of no use to anyone, really. And your unique contribution to the world is lost. And
That's
that for
right.
me is scary,
That's right.
because now we can't live in purpose. We can't live in purpose. We can't live on purpose.
On purpose.
We are just following what someone else described. Actually, I had this epiphany about myself not long ago. And it was that for the longest time, I was doing things, I was accepting roles that other people were telling me they got insight that this is the role I should do, or I should be doing, or this is meant for you. To the point where sometimes they would say, the spirit told me. And then I would take these roles. And a big reason why I would take these roles is because I wasn't checking into spirit for myself. So
Right.
I was depending on someone else to tell me. And I would take these roles. I'm like, what on earth?
Mm.
Come on, snap out of it. And it was repeating. It kept
Yes.
repeating. It kept repeating
Yes.
until I'm like, yeah, no, I don't know which spirit you were talking to, but that's not what I'm hearing.
Mhm.
And that came with some more confidence. That after doing the work of looking and seeking, digging up some things for myself, I got more confident in saying, yeah, no. I got more confident in saying, heck yes. And I
Yeah.
got more confident in saying, this is my gift. Let me pour it out. Let me give it out without reservation to those who would best, benefit from it. So all that
Yeah.
to say, I hear
Hmm.
you. I hear you
Hmm.
100%. And I'm really, really looking forward to you sharing your story, because I sense that you had a pivotal moment, or you had something that happened somewhere along the journey. You kind of made that switch. Tell us a little bit about that catalyst moment for you.
Sure. I guess there've been a few.
Yes.
Uh, I think, just to touch on something you mentioned really quickly, um, with regard to being selfish and sharing your gifts, right?
Mhm.
I used to think that my gifts were private, right? Like,
Mm.
when you find out what your gifts are, it's like, oh, like, that's how I'm special, I'm going to keep that to myself. And your gifts are meant to be shared.
Right.
And that is one of the reasons why you do have to be selfish and you do have to put yourself first, because you are giving so much of yourself, right? Because you have that purpose. And
That
so
is
you
powerful.
you really cannot afford, right? When you realize that you are gifted, so to speak, you cannot afford to not prioritize yourself.
Yeah. Actually,
Um,
I'll dive
mhm,
in with that too, because
sure.
I was serving with a charity, helping women who were victims of violence.
Hmm.
And our executive director would always tell us, we do suffer vicarious trauma. because we have to hear about it. Even if we're not living it, we have to hear about all these things. We have to find ways to kind of walk. I mean, I'm not gonna belittle the experiences of these women, but we kind of have to walk in their shoes to some degree as we innovate and create programs and strategies and resources for them. And she
Mhm.
said so many people in the social services sector are sick because we're not taking care of and treating our vicarious trauma. And that is one of the reasons she will tell you she has
Mhm.
her self care on lockdown,
Mhm.
because she appreciates the vicious cycle that that trauma can be when we're constantly pouring and pouring and pouring out of ourselves. We have to be very intentional to fill ourselves back up. And you're right, that is not selfish, that is survival. And I think that is a commitment to our
Mhm.
service and our gift being of use to other people. So I wanted to
Yeah.
make sure we didn't miss that. That was a
Yes.
really powerful share there, and thank you for bringing it up.
Yes, absolutely. And I think also that, the vicarious trauma, I kind of hadn't really thought about it in terms of the workplace. I mean, it's definitely there because we talk about toxic work environments, but in
Yeah.
terms of actually providing that service as your work and having to understand and absorb all of that to do your job is
Yeah.
absolutely um something that I will be thinking a little bit more about. And also the vicarious trauma, we see that with our family,
Oh,
right?
yes.
In terms of the things that you just don't even realize what is being put upon you or how you're conditioned
Mhm.
until you maybe have an epiphany or just try to deviate a little bit, and the resistance that you get. I know
Yeah.
for me, having a child is bringing up so many things that I thought that I had
Trust
healed, or
me.
issues that I didn't know I had. And I'm like, oh my, I need to work on this because this is a problem. I mean, who would have thought that that would have been an issue, right? Kind of getting back to your question from a couple minutes ago.
Sure.
Um, One of the things that, kind of one of my realizations uh recently was in terms of the my financial options and
Mhm.
my needs being met. I had told myself, especially in the legal profession, my 9 to 5,
Right.
that it was all about acquiring titles and positions and, climbing up the ladder and making more money.
Mhm.
And the more you do that, the more expenses you have, right? The
Fair.
more things come up. Excuse me. And I was missing something, right? So I was
Mhm.
missing some of that trauma that had kind of seeped in, right, from generations past in terms of
Mhm.
how I thought about money,
Right.
how I thought about wealth and wealthy people, right?
Yes.
And so by virtue of that, I had kind of cut off doing research about what type of options I had to help myself, right? It was like, you got a bill, you got to pay it. It's up to you. It's your responsibility. This is your fault. It was just like all this stuff.
Right.
Um, don't live beyond your means. Don't do this, don't do that, don't do the other. And just kind of, there wasn't really any kind of fun or any kind of an empowerment in finances.
Right.
And so having, been in a position where, like once again, using New York as an example, making too much money to qualify for certain things and not making enough money to actually buy the things you need.
Yep, I know it
It's like
well.
I'm like I'm in the middle here, so what do I do? And things had gotten really overwhelming, and to a point where it was paycheck to paycheck, and I was watching those interest rates creep up, and it
Mhm.
got to a point where it was like, okay, I'm not putting a dent in my principal. Like, what the heck is happening? So I tried a little, like, let's do the payment plan, let's call the company, let's do this, let's, kind of like try to change the billing date and see if I can
Mhm.
negotiate, paying, staggering them so they weren't all coming out of one paycheck. That
Right.
was also the rent paycheck and just all this stuff, right? Um, and it got to a point where I was just like, I can't do this anymore. This is just not manageable. It's not sustainable. And so I ended up um, filing bankruptcy.
Mm-hmm.
And so initially, I had investigated doing a Chapter 7 bankruptcy
Uh-huh.
and didn't qualify for it because there's a means test for it.
Yes.
Again, based upon what guidelines? I mean, those guidelines were ridiculous, were kind of bonkers to me. But so I did that, and I'm like, okay, fine. So what are my other options, right? Like, I'm like, I know this is not just because I don't qualify for this. I know this is not the end of it for me because
Right.
I'm like, I know I'm not the only one who's having trouble paying bills. When I hear the reports on the news, and when I talk to people, and when I see people in my neighborhood in these fancy houses, I'm like, I know y'all got bills.
Yep.
I know you got bills. I'm not the only one. So I
Mm-hmm.
said, what are my options? And I'm like, okay, let's revisit some of the other chapters in the
Yes,
bankruptcy
please.
law. Um, came to the chapter 13, um, did the math in terms of how much I had been paying on a monthly basis for
Mm-hmm.
2024, 2023, going back as things were
Right.
starting to creep up and accumulate. Like this, I could have bought a house.
Oh
Like
my
this is
goodness.
ridiculous. So I realized I'm like, look, what are my options? Right? Let me talk to an expert because I'm doing my internet research. Let me talk to an expert. Okay, so do a chapter 13. Let's
Okay.
figure out how much you make, how much you're spending. They allow for certain, expenses in your budget.
Yes.
So it's not
Yes.
like they're just going to bleed you dry and take all your money and make you pay this stuff back. But what it does do is stop any lawsuits or, stop the interest rates, stop the late fees, right? Luckily, I
Right.
didn't have the late fees, but those interest rates, some of those cards were like 32%.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Um,
Stranglehold.
and even if they didn't start out that way, because the rates were variable, they crept up, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, okay, let's do this. So I was still kind of just like, I really don't know. Mm, let me see some concrete numbers. They gave me a number, and I'm like, I can do that.
Okay.
I can do that because I'm paying more than that now. So
Right.
I can do that, and just have this thing be off of my back. Now, ideally, I would like to not have to, but it is what it is. And again, this is not the end of the story, right? This is the beginning
Yeah.
chapter, and we will see how they all develop going
Right.
forward. But at least I was able to reclaim some of my power and say, like, I'm not going to allow you to keep pushing up these interest rates. I'm not going to allow you to keep, giving me a penalty because I made a payment at like 11:59, but your clock said it was 12:01. Like
Um.
I'm not doing this, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, so that was a big turning point for me, was realizing I did not have to sit in the overwhelm,
Mm-hmm.
that I could ask some questions,
Yeah.
strategize, figure out a plan, and move forward. And also keep in mind that this is not the be all end all, and I still have options. I still
Yes.
have options. My circumstances could change.
Right.
With this incoming administration, other things could change. You
Oh
don't know
yes.
what's
Oh boy.
going to happen. So this is kind of me looking forward and knowing that I have a little bit more power than I did a few months ago.
That's an extraordinary thing to not only choose to do, but to choose to share. Because
Mhm.
it's a point where, I mean, I coach money. I coach money, I coach mindset. I know that for so many of us, the thought of bankruptcy stamps a permanent brand on you that says failure. And unfortunately, so many of us try to fight having this supposed stamp that we
Yeah,
suffer,
yeah,
we die, and we don't give ourselves the opportunity to start over. Start
that's
over
exactly right.
better and stronger and freer
That's
and
right.
and do that thing that you couldn't do before. I'll tell you straight,
Mhm.
I will never say that bankruptcy is my first option, but
Yeah.
there are some times when you look at a person, not just the numbers, but their state of mind. When you
Mhm.
look at the repercussions for the family, when you look at
Mhm.
the opportunities you're just missing because this thing's hanging over your head,
Yes.
the
Yes.
recommendation is start over, clean the board, and start over. So you made that brave decision to start over. Were you more scared in going into the decision than you were freed by the outcome?
No, I was angry. I wasn't scared. I was angry and aware that that is something that, again, when I mentioned that I had certain thoughts about wealthy people,
Yes.
they do that all the time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Next.
So let's not play around and act like, right, we don't have options. So
Hmm.
that was my whole thing, was just reaching my utmost level of pissed offness
Yes. Yes.
to the point where there was already a stigma. My credit was not great.
Right.
And so I'm
Right.
like, okay, so there's the stigma of not being able to get any help this way. And then there's the stigma of filing, a chapter
13.
13.
Mhm.
And so I kind of like decided, I told someone else this, that I'm gonna pick the lesser of two stigmas.
Oh, why
And
not?
you're like, I mean, right? So is it ideal? I mean, of course not. I have debt that I need to pay off, right? But it is also my debt.
Yes.
And there's an accountability factor there too. And there are, yes, again, there are universal laws in terms of reciprocity and laws of compensation. And so the freeing part of it for me also was, a couple years ago, I would have said that I'm starting my business so that I can pay off my debt.
Mm. Hmm.
That's not how you run a business, right? So that now takes that burden off, right? And it's like, I'm starting this business because I have a gift that I want to share. I'm starting this business because I want to help other people. Um, Not because I have this need to, you know, take that money and do something else with it. Like, that money is my business money, and then I have the money that I make with my 9 to 5.
Right.
So just mindset shifts, right? Options.
Yeah.
All my needs are met, right? So it's like I got to keep telling myself that, because then these situations present themselves when you're open to that and you shift the mindset. There are certain things that you just are able to do that you wouldn't have even thought about previously.
Yeah.
It's not, I mean, I knew about bankruptcy. This wasn't my first one.
Uh-huh.
Um, this wasn't my first one, actually. And so I knew it was an option, but I wasn't ready for it. The
Mm-hmm.
last time that that I did it was when I was laid off.
Okay.
Found out 2 weeks before, oof, 2 weeks before my office was going to shut down. The security guard told me, my boss didn't even tell me,
Oh my.
and found out that I was going to be laid off. And at that time, I had a mortgage.
Ooh.
Um, and I had paid off my credit cards, right? So I was
Wow.
actively paying down my debt. I was, for the most part, debt free,
Right.
but I had my mortgage. And yeah. So I had to do it. I had to do it then.
Mm-hmm.
Um and that's a whole other story. You could read my book if you want to know a little bit more about that part of my life. But seriously, it again, it just not knowing that you had options. It was devastating. Like, let's just
Yeah.
not. I lost my job. I lost my home. Um it was horrible. It was
Yeah.
horrible. But, I came out on the other side of it,
Yeah.
right? And was like, I am never doing this again. And that was the conditioning and the shoulds and the woulds and the, putting all these labels on who I thought I was. And I'm like, how many times did this person file bankruptcy?
Uh-huh. Yep.
Right. I knew someone else who actually lived in the building that I used to live in, and in the co-op I used to live in. That was his middle name. He was always filing the bankruptcy to get
Bankruptcy. Oh
out
my
of,
goodness.
yeah, for his businesses. All his LLCs were dissolving.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
like,
yeah.
I'm like, okay, let me just not take this so personally.
Right.
It's just money, right? Like it kind of like really, it's an illusion, kind of. And that might be a
Yeah, it
conversation for
really
another,
is.
but it's just, I mean, look, at the end of the day, like let's just get real and let's get serious.
I
And
think that the issue comes when we take these challenges on and assume that it is our identity. That is where the problem comes. Again, we're not being careless, we're not being frivolous, we're not just, left and right like Mr. Bankruptcy in your co-op. But if that is the support that you need to start
Mhm.
over, that's what you do. So in your case, you've started over more than once. You started over this time, this reboot, you are coming to it with a spiritual focus and an acknowledgement of your gifts. You're also looking at it from the perspective of this isn't who I am, this is what I do, this is one circumstance, and what have you. You can now take that experience that you shared and help to create tools, resources for the people now that will share in your gift or that will benefit from your gift. How are you now inspiring the people that you work with, the clients that are looking for that wonderful gift that you have? How are you helping them?
That's wonderful, a wonderful question. I mean, that remains to be seen, right? Because as I mentioned, the mottos of all my needs are met and I have options apply to all different aspects of life. And
Mhm.
so going through those different chapters and prioritizing, right? Those phases and kind of understanding. My clients could be at any point in their lives where they are ready for change.
Mhm.
So it really just kind of depends upon what they're choosing to focus on at that moment, what stage of their life they may be in.
Right.
It could be that they want to change jobs, right?
Fair.
To a certain extent, making that shift kind of requires a little bit of gratitude for the job that you have, right?
Yeah.
You have options and you can move on. Um, but shift the focus a little bit in terms of your current circumstances, right? And get clear on where you want to go next.
Mhm.
Um, Relationships, understanding that it's not just the other person in the relationship, you're there too.
Yes.
Um, Parenting is another area, a really big area for me. That's been a very life-changing experience that just continues to unfold. Um, Seeing all of the seeing the world through my son's eyes, and then also realizing what my perception of the world has been, right? And do
Yes.
I want to share that with him, or do I want to kind of adopt his
Oh.
perspective, right?
Uh-huh.
So just kind of like understanding him a little bit, right? He again came here with his imprint on his little personality was there from day one.
Right.
Um, and then, again with the finances, right? And just having some perspective, having a little bit of maturity, having some wisdom and some life experience. I think I look younger than I am. But I have, been through some stuff,
Yeah, no
right?
doubt.
And had some experiences and done some work, right? And made a lot of observations as well.
Right.
Um, Even if it hasn't been through personal experience. And so being able to have that perspective, being able to dip into different roles and perspectives, um, I think is just something that would benefit anyone. I know that's not really a target audience, right, for the clientele, but I do find that when I talk to people one on one, I can talk to anybody about anything, right? I feel like I know a little bit about a lot of stuff,
Yes.
right?
Well,
And then
it's
I
a point where
know
you
the
can
stuff that
connect.
I know.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
It's a point of connection. And to be
Hmm.
honest, there's more that connects us than divides us. I know there are a lot of loudspeakers that are trying to divide in this current state,
Hmm.
but there's more that we can connect with each other about
Right.
than we will be divided on. So I think it's beneficial. I think I'll ask you this, Chutsani. If
Hmm.
if you didn't have the challenges that you had along the way, do you think you would have arrived to your place of service at this point?
My gut answer is no.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm wondering
I don't think so. I don't think I would have
because
because I think when you have certain challenges, I think that that's it's on purpose because
yes.
it's time for the upgrade and what you do with it is kind of like up to you. And I think at that point, because I had started doing some of the inner work, like it wasn't a victim mentality of like, what's
Mhm.
happening to me? But it was more so a matter of like, okay, well, look, since this is happening to me, right? Let me figure out a way to kind of do something about it.
Yeah,
Um, and so I think I didn't necessarily know that when I went on the journey that I was going to find out the things about myself that I did.
right.
Um, I remember just kind of asking, like, what are my gifts? Like, do I have gifts? Right? Like,
Yes.
what am I here for? Um, and I'm just like, well, if I don't know, then I'll just pick something because I'm like, I knew what I was good at, but maybe that wasn't the only thing I was good at, or maybe I was better at something else. I don't know. But I started just doing some work and I'm like, okay, I really kind of didn't realize that I was already headed in the right direction. And we probably
Mhm.
all are without
Yes.
even knowing it, right? And so, so yeah, I think that if those things hadn't happened to me, I may not have ended up here. I probably would have had another purpose or another direction that I would have gone in because there is no one path. That's the other thing also, right? So because of those experiences, like it's like a tree, like tree branches. You can really kind of go in any direction, but the tree is always going to go, it's going to grow up towards the sun,
That's
right?
right.
Or at the very least, depending upon what kind of tree it is, it's going to grow out,
Well,
right?
it's growing. That's
But
the
it's
point. It's
yes,
growing.
exactly.
It's growing. It's
Exactly.
going through the cycles. I love
Yeah.
using the
Yeah.
seasons and nature as
Hmm.
examples of how life was intended. It's very cyclical. Even
That's
the
right.
tree that's always growing goes through fall and winter when it
That's
sheds
right. That's right.
and then it comes
Yeah.
back in on itself to ensure survival. It goes inwards,
That's right.
so that in the spring it can blossom again. That's
Hmm.
one of the beautiful things about coming to a country where you have a specific 4 season cycle. You really
Hmm.
get to see that. And it's
Hmm.
unreasonable, I think, for us to think that life is supposed to just be blooms and blossoms all the time
That's right.
without the opportunities, and deliberately calling them opportunities, without the opportunities for growth, without the
Hmm.
opportunities where we're challenged and we experience new strengths and new things about ourselves. We need that, and I don't think we should run from it. I'm still at the point where I rejoice in it. I'm not there yet, but
Hmm.
we certainly need to be open to it so that we know this is a season. How can we make the best of this season? So I'm really, really appreciative that you were so candid about your catalyst moment, one of many, as we all have. And I'm really, really happy that your work is being offered to the world because we need it. We all need it. We need that guide. And regardless of whether your spiritual, I guess, your domain is in mainstream or not mainstream, whether
Hmm.
we're calling it one thing or another. I think we all need to find that guide that resonates, that reaches us,
Mhm.
and we are able to tap into it for our best experience on this earth. For
Mhm.
heaven's sake, I can do with a little bit of the good stuff, right?
Right. Right.
Absolutely. So,
Yeah.
Chotsani, tell us where we can find you. This was a phenomenal conversation. I know that there will be others who are going to seek you out. So,
Oh,
where are you in the interwebs? How can we get in touch? How can people experience your work?
sure. So I would say the lunarreflector.com,
Mhm.
THELUNAR, and then reflector. So there's going to be two R's back to back,
Right.
.com. And that's where everything will be. Links to everything will be on that website, a little bit more information about me. And yeah, I look forward to watching this replay. And yeah, I just really just wanted to say thank you also for the opportunity.
For sure.
Remembering when we met, and was just very impressed and honored that you reached out to have me participate in this. So
For sure.
yeah.
Yeah, it has been my pleasure. I am an inspiration. I tapped into that purpose a long time ago now.
Hmm.
And I don't think you get to be an inspiration all by yourself. You inspire, and I can inspire in so many ways. And one of the ways I do that is by exposing people to greatness. And trust me when I tell you, Shatsani, your work is creating greatness, not just within you, but within the people that you work with, and the ripple just keeps going out. I want some of the good stuff, some of the happy juju. So for sure, I will be looking forward to sharing this episode with as many who are positioned to hear it. And I want to say thank you for being part of this. I really appreciate your time. And yes, to all those who are listening, thank you for being part of Catalyst Conversations. I'll be seeing you soon. Thank you for joining me today on Catalyst Conversations. I hope this episode sparked something powerful to help on your journey to building wealth confidently and unapologetically. If you loved today's conversation, be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if something resonated with you, I'd love to hear about it. Let's keep the conversation going. Until next time, keep moving toward your goals, stay empowered, and continue sparking change on your wealth journey. This is Hadriana, and you've been listening to Catalyst Conversations.